Morning light filled the small home as birds chirped softly in the quiet courtyard.
The elderly mother swept the courtyard slowly.
She paused to gaze at her son's framed photo, her eyes full of longing and tenderness.
Far away, her son worked in a luxurious office, dressed sharply amid modern surroundings.
When Amy called, he glanced at his phone and chose to ignore it.
Back home, she sat on the chatpai, holding her phone close, worry filling her lonely heart. Her son laughed with wealthy friends at a fancy restaurant, lost in his lavish lifestyle.
She prepared a simple meal and placed an extra plate, hoping he might return.
She waited at the table, staring at the empty chair across from her. Her son checked his expensive watch impatiently as work consumed his day. She slowly folded his old clothes and placed them neatly inside a wooden trunk, preserving memories.
In a large meeting room, he spoke confidently, instructing his team with authority.
Alone in her room, she prayed on her prayer mat, tears slipping down as she made dua for her son.
His boss handed him a promotion letter, and he smiled proudly, feeling unstoppable.
She visited a neighbor, softly asking if they had seen her son recently, hoping for news. He read her message, "Son, when come?" and without thinking he deleted it.
She stood near the gate, listening for footsteps that never came.
He proudly showed off his new car to friends, enjoying their admiration.
That night, she coughed hard in her room, pressing a hand to her chest as pain grew. She tried calling him again, but the phone kept ringing without an answer.
He attended a business party filled with music and bright lights, unaware of her condition. She sat quietly in the clinic's waiting area, looking pale and exhausted. The doctor examined her and frowned with concern, noticing her weakness.
At the same time, he danced with colleagues, carefree in celebration.
The doctor advised her to rest more, warning her that stress was worsening her health.
She walked home slowly, stopping once to support herself against a wall.
His staff congratulated him, shaking his hand as he enjoyed the attention. She heated water for tea, her hands trembling slightly from weakness.
He sped through the night in his new car, music playing loudly.
She sat alone for dinner again, staring at the untouched, empty plate beside her. After prayer, she folded her prayer mat slowly, her weak hands trembling as she placed it aside.
He entered his luxurious apartment and casually dropped his car keys onto the marble table.
She dialed his number again, her eyes filled with small hope that he might pick up this time. He glanced at the phone and, annoyed, covered the screen with his hand, ignoring the call once more.
She lay on her charpai with her hand on her forehead, completely drained.
He relaxed on his sofa, scrolling through social media posts with a carefree smile.
Late at night, she sat up suddenly, coughing harshly and holding her chest in discomfort. He snapped a selfie and posted it online with the caption, "Living my best life."
She gently opened his old-school notebooks, smiling faintly at the memory of his childhood. He enjoyed a lavish dinner alone, savoring each bite without a single worry.
She lit a small oil lamp near the Quran shelf, whispering a quiet prayer for her son's safety.
On stage, he received an award, smiling proudly as cameras flashed around him.
She wiped dust off his childhood trophy, polishing it with gentle care and love.
He posed for selfies with his colleagues, laughter and excitement filling the room. She sat on the floor, sorting through old photographs, memories flooding her heart. He checked his notifications, hundreds of messages, but not a single one from her caught his attention. She asked a neighborhood boy to send a message to her son, hoping he might respond.
He read the message, "Your army is asking about you," and ignored it without hesitation.
She sat near the window with closed eyes, praying silently for her son's well-being.
He laughed loudly at a coworker's joke during lunch, enjoying the moment. She walked alone to the market, carrying a small cloth bag clutched in her hand.
He entered a high-end store confidently, his credit card ready for another purchase.
She asked the shopkeeper politely for a small discount on vegetables, counting her limited money.
He admired an expensive watch and bought it instantly, barely glancing at the price.
She climbed the stairs painfully, holding her knee with every strained step. Sitting in his car, he adjusted his new watch proudly, admiring his reflection.
On the rooftop, she sat quietly in the cool evening breeze, lost deep in thought.
He bragged openly to a coworker about his rising success and growing wealth. She felt dizzy near the kitchen sink, gripping its edge to keep from falling.
He shook hands with investors in a polished boardroom, sealing another big deal.
She sat quietly in a corner of the mosque, her hands clasped as she whispered prayers.
He sat across from a manager, discussing project delays with a confident tone. She gave sadaqah to a beggar outside the mosque, despite having little herself. He argued sharply with a colleague, irritation rising as frustrations grew.
She prepared chai for herself, her hands shaking slightly as she poured it into the cup.
His phone rang, bank, and he answered, his expression shifting to concern.
A neighbor helped her sit down when she suddenly felt faint and breathless.
He stared at an email detailing a financial irregularity, confusion and shock filling his eyes.
She lay weakly on her charpai as a neighbor placed a wet cloth on her burning forehead.
He sat at his desk with his hands pressed against his head, overwhelmed by sudden stress.
Her breathing grew harder, and the neighbor frantically called for an ambulance.
He received another call. Your company audit has failed, and his heart dropped.
Paramedics placed her gently onto a stretcher, rushing her toward the ambulance. His boss informed him he was suspended, and his world suddenly felt unstable.
The neighbor checked her phone and called her son, hoping he would answer this time.
Seeing the neighbor's name, he answered casually, unaware of the situation.
The neighbor's urgent voice said, "Your mother is serious. Please come quickly."
He stood frozen, the phone still at his ear, shock wiping the color from his face. He rushed outside and ran toward his car, panic tightening his chest.
The ambulance carrying his mother sped through the streets, siren echoing loudly. He drove as fast as he could, tears blurring his vision as regret hit him hard. At the hospital entrance, paramedics rushed the stretcher inside urgently. The doctors quickly pushed her stretcher toward the emergency ward. He ran through the hospital corridors, breathless and terrified.
He reached the reception desk, desperately asking, "Meri ammi kahan hai?"
The nurse pointed toward the emergency room with a serious expression.
He stood outside the emergency door, tears falling silently as guilt consumed him. Inside, his mother lay unconscious with an oxygen mask, looking fragile and pale. The doctor stepped out, his expression heavy and serious. The doctor said softly, "She was under too much stress. If she had support earlier, things would be different."
He held her cold hand tightly, crying like a child, begging her to wake up.
Her eyes opened slightly, and she gave him a weak, gentle smile. He lowered his head on her hand and whispered apologies through his tears. Despite her weakness, she lifted her hand and placed it lovingly on his head. He gently brought a glass of water to her lips, helping her sip slowly.
He sat by her bedside the entire night, refusing to move even for a moment.
Morning light filled the room as he still sat awake, holding her hand tightly.
The doctor informed him she would recover but needed care, rest, and emotional peace.
He pushed her wheelchair out of the hospital gently, determination shining in his eyes. At home, he fed her dinner with loving hands, and she smiled peacefully, grateful that her son had finally returned to her.